Before we begin this wild story, tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories of chaos and karma can travel. The plane smelled faintly of citrus cleaner mixed with recycled air, the kind of sterile calm that always made me uneasy before takeoff. Buck, my golden retriever, lay at my feet with his head resting on the armrest of the seat I'd purchased for him, his vest read, "Service Dog" in bold white letters across black nylon, a clear sign of his purpose. I had paid extra to make sure Buck had the space he needed to work without distraction. At 38, I'd learned that preparation was survival, for both me and the dog who steadied me when the world tilted too hard. The cabin buzzed with the sound of passengers storing bags, fastening seatbelts, and calling for attendants. For once, I thought I might actually board a flight without incident. Then I heard her, a sharp, demanding voice cutting through the chatter with the confidence of someone used to getting her way. "There it is." Perfect, finally some space. I turned to look. A woman, maybe around 40, blonde hair perfectly curled and stiff with hairspray, was pushing down the aisle as if she owned it. She wore a sleeveless pink dress that seemed more suited for a party than a flight. On her hip was a little girl, no older than 2, cheeks flushed from fussing, a pacifier hanging from a string. Her eyes locked on the empty seat beside Buck, and in that instant I knew trouble had just boarded the plane. Without asking, she marched forward and announced, "I'll put my baby here." Finally, some room to breathe. My pulse tightened. "Excuse me, ma'am," I said evenly. "That seat's taken. I purchased it for my service dog." Her head snapped toward me, eyes wide with disbelief. "You bought a seat for a dog?" Before I could respond, she leaned in, her tone full of indignation. "No, absolutely not." "That's ridiculous. You expect me to hold my baby the entire flight when there's a perfectly good seat right here?" Buck stirred, sensing my rising tension. His ears perked, but he stayed calm, steady as always. I rested a hand on his head. "It's not empty," I said quietly. "It's his seat. He's working." The woman laughed sharply, loud enough to turn nearby heads. "Working? He's a dog. My daughter is a child. Surely you can see who deserves the seat more." She began lowering the toddler into the chair, fumbling for the seat belt as if claiming it faster would make it hers. I blocked her hand, firm but polite. "Ma'am, I paid for this seat. The FAA allows service animals to have their own seat if it's purchased. If you needed one for your daughter, it should have been booked ahead of time." That struck a nerve. Her face flushed with anger, lips tightening. "Are you seriously telling me you care more about a mutt than a child? What kind of person does that?" The words hung heavy in the air. Passengers began whispering. A man across the aisle shook his head, and a woman nearby murmured to her seatmate. Phones appeared, subtle but present, recording the moment. I took a slow breath, the kind I practiced when panic crept close. Buck nudged my leg, grounding me. "This isn't about choosing between them," I said calmly. "It's about responsibility. You chose not to buy a seat for your daughter. I chose to buy one for my service dog." She threw her hand up dramatically, almost hitting the overhead bin. "Responsibility? I'm a mother. Do you even know how hard it is to travel with a child? The airline should be ashamed for letting you waste a seat like this." Her daughter whimpered softly, clinging tighter as the woman's voice rose. Flight attendants glanced over but were busy helping other passengers. The aisle buzzed with tension, strangers forming a silent jury. I lowered my tone, trying to ease the situation. "Ma'am, I don't want to argue, but this seat isn't yours. Please don't make this harder." She sneered and pointed at Buck. "Dogs don't need seats. He can sit on the floor. My baby deserves safety." The cabin seemed to shrink. I could feel every eye on us, the silent question hanging in the air. Was I really going to let a child go without a seat for the sake of a dog? My chest burned with the unfairness of it. She wasn't asking for compassion. She was demanding something that wasn't hers. Buck pressed his head against my hand again, a gentle reminder of what steadiness meant. And deep down I knew this confrontation was far from over. My voice hardened. "If you can't hold your child, you should have planned better. Don't take it out on me." Her eyes widened, fury twisting her expression into something raw and defiant. "If you don't move, I'll make you move." A ripple of gasps spread through the cabin. Some passengers turned away. Others leaned in, drawn by the growing tension. The air felt thick, charged, heavier than the pressurized walls around us. My heartbeat thundered in my throat. She had crossed the line from entitled to aggressive, and I knew reason wouldn't reach her anymore. I caught the eye of a flight attendant and raised my hand. "I need the captain." I said, keeping my voice steady despite the storm building inside me. The attendant hesitated, then nodded and hurried down the aisle. The woman smirked as if she had already won. Her child squirmed in discomfort, but she forced the seatbelt around her anyway, glaring at me with misplaced triumph. The hum of the engines beneath us was a reminder. We hadn't even left the ground, and already the flight had turned into a battlefield. I leaned back, drawing a slow breath, feeling Buck's calm weight against my leg. The pilot was my friend. If anyone could cut through her arrogance, it was him. But until he arrived, we were trapped in a tense stalemate. Me, Buck, and a woman who believed the world owed her whatever she demanded. The cabin had fallen silent. Every passenger watched, waiting to see who would yield first. I didn't move. Neither did Buck. The stage was set, and the curtain hadn't even risen on the real confrontation yet. Before we dive deeper into what happened next, one of my favorite stories I've ever shared is linked in the description and on the end screen. It's called Karen Said People Like You Shouldn't Sit in First Class. She didn't know I was the air marshal on board. If you haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend it. It's pure karma at 30,000 feet. Lauren's voice suddenly sliced through the cabin, sharp enough to rattle nerves and pull every eye toward us. She stood in the aisle, her daughter half buckled into Buck's seat as if she'd claimed it by force, her chest rising and falling with anger. The hush of anticipation spread like a wave. Everyone could sense the explosion coming, but no one dared intervene. Phones that had appeared earlier were still up, recording every second. "You're unbelievable," she spat, her voice shrill with outrage. "Do you even hear yourself? You're robbing a child of safety just so your animal can sit like royalty." I kept my voice calm and steady. "He's not lounging. He's working. He's here for my health." And again I paid for that seat. My words didn't register. She let out a harsh, mocking laugh and turned to the nearest passengers. "Do you hear this? A grown man choosing a dog over a baby. This is the world we live in." She clutched her daughter tightly, scanning faces for support. "Somebody tell him he's out of his mind." A few passengers avoided her gaze. Others quietly shook their heads. The silence she met wasn't the validation she wanted, it was rejection. Her frustration flared hotter, feeding on the lack of approval. A flight attendant approached carefully, her smile tight but professional. "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but this gentleman purchased that seat for his service animal. We cannot reassign it," Lauren snapped toward her. "You're siding with him? With a dog? I have a child." She gestured sharply to her toddler, who was now whining from the uncomfortable belt. "What kind of airline values animals over children?" The attendant's tone stayed calm, though her patience was thinning. "Ma'am, infants under 2 travel as lap children. That's the ticket you purchased. If you wanted a separate seat, you had the option to buy one at booking. This seat is not available." Lauren's face hardened. "So after all the money I spent and everything I went through to get here, I don't deserve the same respect as him?" She turned back to me, her glare cold. "You're pathetic, hiding behind rules and paperwork. A decent person would give up the seat without a fight." The accusation stung, but I refused to let it show. "I'm not hiding," I said quietly. "I'm standing up for what I paid for. If you feel wronged, take it up with the airline. But don't take what isn't yours." Her nostrils flared. For a moment I thought she might actually lunge. Instead, she yanked at the seatbelt again, forcing the buckle tight. "I'm not moving. Try and stop me." The tension stretched to its limit, a wire ready to snap. Gasps rippled through the rows as more phones tilted higher, openly recording now. The entire cabin had become a stage, and Lauren was determined to play the part of the victim. I leaned forward slightly, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "This isn't going to end the way you think." That only fueled her fury. She straightened, voice booming down the rows. "If he thinks he can threaten me, he's wrong. I have every right to keep my baby safe. And if this airline doesn't care, then shame on all of you." The murmurs of disapproval grew louder, though none were directed at me. A young man 2 rows back spoke up. "Lady, you didn't buy the seat." "End of story," another passenger added. "Don't punish him for your mistake." Lauren spun toward them, her face flushed with outrage. "Stay out of this," she shouted. But the backlash she had tried to ignite was turning against her. She could feel it, too. Her confidence flickered, her eyes darting with sudden desperation. Then came the tears, well, timed and shaky, her voice trembling with manufactured fragility. "Please, she pleaded. I'm just a mother trying to protect my child. He doesn't understand how terrifying it is to fly with a baby. She stroked her daughter's hair and swayed gently, her voice cracking. What kind of world are we living in when a dog matters more than a child? It was a performance, every word soaked in self-pity and manipulation. Some passengers looked uneasy, but most saw through the act. Sympathy was slipping away faster than she could summon it. I took a slow breath, letting Buck's calm weight against my leg keep me grounded. No one said your child doesn't matter, I said evenly. But rules matter. Fairness matters. You can't make your poor planning my responsibility. Her tears vanished as quickly as they'd appeared, replaced by raw anger. If you don't let me use this seat, she hissed, I'll make sure you regret it. That was the final straw. The flight attendant straightened, her voice now sharp and controlled. Ma'am, you cannot threaten another passenger. If you don't cooperate, we'll have to involve the captain. Lauren barked out a bitter laugh. Fine, bring him. I'd love to see what he has to say about this circus. She crossed her arms and planted herself in the aisle like a wall of defiance. The attendant hurried off, tension rippling behind her. The hum of the engine seemed louder now, a reminder that takeoff was near. Yet we were locked in a standoff that refused to end. Around us, whispers turned into commentary. She's unbelievable. Totally entitled. This is going viral for sure. The glow of recording screens multiplied, capturing every angle. Lauren either didn't notice or didn't care. She was too caught up in her belief that she could win through sheer volume and drama. I sat still, my jaw tight and my pulse heavy in my ears. Buck shifted beside me, pressing his body against my leg, steady, calm, reminding me we'd weathered worse storms. But this had gone far enough. This wasn't about comfort anymore. It was about principle. Minutes dragged by, each second louder than the last. Then a ripple of movement passed through the front rows. Heads turned. Conversations hushed. A uniformed figure appeared at the far end of the aisle. Tall, composed, commanding. His cap sat low beneath the cabin lights. His steps steady and unhurried. The captain. Relief flooded through me. Not because the conflict was over, but because it was about to be resolved. Lauren, unaware of what she'd just set in motion, straightened up with smug satisfaction. Finally, she said loudly. Someone who'll understand. She didn't realize she had just summoned the one person who could end this entire scene with a single decision. The captain's presence transformed the cabin instantly. Conversations died mid-sentence. Phones rose higher. Passengers leaned out into the aisle, waiting for the climax of the drama they'd been recording. His polished shoes clicked softly against the floor as he approached, every step radiating authority. His gaze moved first to me, then to Buck, and finally to the woman standing defiantly in the aisle. What's the situation here? His voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. I rose slightly from my seat, keeping my tone measured. Captain, I purchased this seat for my service dog. She's trying to take it for her child even though she didn't buy a ticket for the seat. Lauren cut me off immediately, her voice shrill and shaking. That's not true. I'm a mother, and this man is putting his dog above my baby. Look at her, she needs safety, not his mutt wasting space. Lauren thrust her toddler forward like proof of her innocence. Are you really going to stand there and let this injustice happen? She cried. The captain's expression didn't change. His calm carried authority that silenced the entire cabin. Ma'am, he said evenly, did you purchase a ticket for your daughter? Lauren hesitated, her lips tightening. She's under 2. She flies free on my lap. But that doesn't mean she shouldn't have her own seat if there's one available. The captain's jaw set firmly. Seats are available to those who pay for them. This gentleman did. You did not. Her face flushed deep red. For a moment I thought she might explode. So you're siding with him? With a dog? What happened to compassion? What kind of captain are you? The captain didn't flinch. I'm the kind of captain who enforces fairness, he said. And right now you're attempting to occupy a seat that doesn't belong to you. That's theft. The word hit her like a slap. Gasps rippled through the rows as passengers exchanged knowing looks. Phones tilted higher, recording every second. Lauren tried to recover, her voice cracking into desperate sobs. Please, I'm begging you. Don't make me hold her the whole flight. It's dangerous, it's cruel. Just let us sit here. Who will it hurt? The captain's tone hardened. What hurts, he said, is allowing one passenger to trample the rights of another. You've been told repeatedly This seat is not yours. This is your final warning. Return to your assigned seat or you'll be removed from the aircraft." Her tears dried instantly, replaced by cold defiance. You wouldn't dare throw off a mother and child. That would be a PR disaster. The world would hate you for it. The captain didn't blink. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "the world is already watching." His eyes flicked toward the cluster of recording phones. For the first time, a hint of fear crossed her face. But her pride refused to let go. She lifted her chin and clutched her child tighter. "Then let them watch," she hissed. "I'm not moving." The cabin went silent. Every breath hung in the air. Then the captain spoke into his radio, crisp and final. "Gate security. Cabin 1. Removal required." Chaos erupted moments later as 2 uniformed officers boarded the plane. Their footsteps were heavy, deliberate. Lauren shrieked, clinging to the armrests while her daughter cried in confusion. "This is abuse. You can't do this to me. He's the one breaking the rules, not me." Passengers began to boo. Voices rose from every direction. "Pay for your seat. Get off already." The crowd, once quiet, had turned into a tribunal of justice. Phones flashed, capturing every second. The officers pried her hands from the seat. She kicked and screamed as her hair fell loose, mascara streaking down her face. Her child wailed louder, a heartbreaking echo of her mother's chaos. Still, they lifted her and carried her down the aisle past rows of unbothered faces. One passenger called out, "Bye, Karen!" Laughter followed, harsh and final. The captain stood tall until she was gone. Then he straightened his uniform and addressed the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay. We'll be departing shortly." A wave of applause broke out, cheers and claps filling the air like relief after a storm. The tension dissolved, replaced by quiet gratitude. I sank back into my seat, finally able to breathe. Buck pressed his head into my palm, calm and steady, the true picture of loyalty. "Good boy," I whispered. "We made it." The captain paused near me before heading back to the cockpit. A faint smile touched his lips. "No one messes with my passengers," he said softly. "Especially not my friends." As he disappeared into the cockpit, the flight attendants moved swiftly, restoring calm with quiet professionalism. One placed a complimentary drink voucher on my tray. "You handled that incredibly well," she said kindly. Around me, passengers murmured their approval. A woman across the aisle leaned over and smiled. "Good for you," she said. "She thought she could bully you. I'm glad you stood your ground." I nodded politely, but inside, my thoughts were still replaying everything that had happened. The entitlement, the manipulation, the way she had used her child as a shield to get her way. It was never about safety or motherhood. It was about control. And she had lost that completely. The engines roared louder, signaling departure. The cabin lights dimmed, and as we pushed back from the gate, I glanced at the empty seat beside Buck. Justice had been served, and the silence that followed was its sweetest reward. Hours later, as we cruised high above the clouds, my phone buzzed with notifications. Curious, I opened one, and there it was. A video already going viral. The caption read, "Passenger tries to steal service dog's seat, gets kicked off flight." The footage showed Lauren shouting, the captain's firm response, and the moment security escorted her away. The comments were filled with outrage at her behavior and praise for how the situation was handled. The internet jury had spoken, and the verdict was unanimous. I leaned back, the hum of the engine soothing now. A small smile tugged at my lips as Buck rested his head on my knee. Calm as ever, his quiet presence reminding me that the world outside could spin with chaos. But in this moment, order had returned. The irony wasn't lost on me. If Lauren had simply purchased a seat for her daughter, none of this would have happened. But arrogance had a way of writing its own downfall. She gambled on pride and lost it all. As the cabin dimmed and passengers settled into sleep or soft conversation, I whispered quietly just for Buck to hear. Entitlement doesn't fly. The plane climbed higher, leaving the chaos and Lauren's humiliation far below. As the engines hummed steadily and the clouds stretched endlessly beneath us, I looked down at Buck curled at my feet, his service vest a reminder of why I stood my ground. The cabin felt lighter now, peaceful, as if everyone had just witnessed a small but powerful act of justice. Lauren had boarded that plane thinking her status would bend the rules. But in the end, it was her pride that got her removed for good. And I won't lie, Watching her march down that aisle in defeat was one of the most satisfying sights I've ever seen. Karma doesn't always arrive quickly. But when it does, it hits like unexpected turbulence, fast, sharp, and impossible to ignore. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma, make sure to like this video, leave a comment on what you would have done, and subscribe for more real-life stories where justice always finds its way.